Unashed, the first sign of trouble wasn't Prince Harry's abrupt exit, it was the sudden silence that swept across the ballroom the moment Princess Catherine appeared near the entrance. Conversations froze, staff exchanged uneasy glances, and within minutes, Harry was gone. What should have been a glittering charity gala in central London reportedly spiraled into one of the most uncomfortable royal encounters in recent memory. Reports suggest palace aides were already preparing for fallout before the night had even ended. Before we go deeper into what this really means for the royal family, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single update. The evening had reportedly been designed as a carefully controlled appearance for Prince Harry. According to insiders familiar with the event, organizers believed the gala would offer a rare opportunity for the Duke of Sussex to reconnect with influential donors, former royal associates, and elite figures still tied to the old aristocratic circles of London. There was polished silver lining the tables, carefully curated guest lists, and what several attendees later described as a highly managed atmosphere. Reports suggest Harry arrived appearing calm, composed, and fully aware that every interaction inside the venue could shape headlines across Britain by morning. But beneath that polished exterior, insiders whisper there was already unease brewing behind palace-adjacent circles long before the night officially began. Sources close to the event claimed security teams had been unusually active throughout the evening, quietly coordinating movement routes and adjusting guest access around the reception corridor. At first, few understood why. Some assumed it was standard royal-adjacent protocol. Others reportedly suspected high-profile political figures might arrive unexpectedly. However, according to palace observers, the sudden tension became unmistakable the moment Princess Catherine entered the venue through a side reception area emerged, easily used for public arrivals. Witnesses claimed the atmosphere shifted almost instantly. Conversations reportedly slowed to a murmur. Several guests allegedly stopped mid-sentence. And somewhere across the ballroom, Prince Harry saw her. Insiders whisper that Harry's reaction was immediate and impossible to ignore. One donor reportedly described it as a visible freeze, while another guest claimed the Duke suddenly lost all expression the moment his eyes met Catherine's across the crowded hall. Reports suggest aides quickly approached him, speaking in low voices as the tension inside the venue quietly escalated. Catherine, meanwhile, reportedly continued greeting attendees with calm composure, offering polite smiles while seemingly refusing to acknowledge the growing discomfort spreading through the room. But according to media insiders, the emotional weight of the moment could already be felt by everyone nearby. What made the situation even more explosive was Meghan Markle's absence. Although she was not reportedly present at the gala, sources suggest her name hovered over conversations throughout the evening like a shadow no one could fully escape. Guests allegedly whispered about the ongoing fractures inside the House of Windsor, while royal commentators quietly speculated whether Harry feared another public controversy involving the Princess of Wales. Some insiders claim the Duke appeared increasingly agitated as more attendees noticed Catherine's presence. Others suggest aides attempted to redirect him toward private lounge areas away from the reception corridor altogether. But by then, according to witnesses, the atmosphere had already become deeply uncomfortable. Several guests reportedly observed tense exchanges between Harry and members of his team near one of the private exits. Security personnel allegedly repositioned themselves with unusual urgency, fueling speculation that palace-connected organizers wanted to avoid any direct encounter between Harry and Catherine becoming public. Reports suggest donors seated near the ballroom entrance were quietly instructed to remain in place as movement inside the venue became increasingly restricted. And then, almost as suddenly as the tension had erupted, Harry was gone. Within minutes, whispers spread through the gala that the Duke had abruptly exited the event altogether. Some attendees reportedly believed he left out of frustration. Others claimed it was an emotional reaction rooted in years of unresolved betrayal, bitterness, and public wounds that never truly healed. Media insiders later described the atmosphere as ice-cold and deeply personal, with several royal observers noting that the discomfort inside the ballroom felt far bigger than a simple, awkward reunion. Because according to those familiar with palace tensions, this was never just about one evening. It was about years of fractures buried beneath royal tradition, duty, and silence. But insiders whisper the tension between Harry, emerged, and Catherine did not begin that evening. It had allegedly been building for years behind palace walls. Long before the gala confrontation, reports suggest the relationship between Prince Harry and Princess Catherine had deteriorated into something far more painful than ordinary royal distance. What was once described as warmth, laughter, and family unity had allegedly become silence, distrust, and carefully managed avoidance. There was a time when palace insiders genuinely believed Harry and Catherine shared one of the strongest personal bonds inside the House of Windsor. Long before memoirs, interviews, and public accusations tore through the monarchy, the Princess of Wales was often described as a stabilizing force in Harry's life. Reports from former royal staffers painted a picture of private dinners, shared jokes, and an almost sibling-like closeness that appeared to soften the pressure surrounding royal duty. In fact, years ago, Harry himself famously referred to Catherine as the sister he never had, a phrase that now lingers over the royal family like the ghost of a far more peaceful era. Because according to insiders, what collapsed between them was not merely public cooperation, it was personal trust. The fracture reportedly began widening after Harry and Meghan's departure from royal life, when what had initially been framed as a temporary search for freedom slowly transformed into a full-scale institutional rupture. Sources suggest palace aides were deeply unprepared for the speed at which tensions escalated behind the scenes. At first, there were whispers of disappointment. Then came silence. Then came the interviews. And according to several royal commentators, each public disclosure allegedly pushed the relationship between Harry and Catherine further into irreversible territory. The fallout surrounding televised interviews reportedly hit particularly hard within the Wales household. While the monarchy publicly maintained composure, insiders whisper to private reactions behind palace walls were far colder than the public ever realized. Allegations made during interviews, combined with deeply personal claims later published in Harry's memoir, reportedly created a level of emotional damage that many senior staff viewed as impossible to fully repair. Palace insiders claim Catherine felt personally wounded by several disclosures involving family conversations and internal tensions, especially because she had once reportedly gone out of her way to support Harry during some of the darkest periods of his earlier royal life. And according to sources familiar with the palace's internal atmosphere at the time, Prince William's reaction became increasingly fierce as the controversy intensified. Reports suggest the future king viewed many of Harry's public statements not simply as criticism of the institution, but as direct attacks against Catherine herself. Insiders whisper that William became deeply protective of his wife in the aftermath, especially as global headlines amplified royal divisions day after day. What had once been frustration reportedly hardened into something far more immovable: distrust. Yet perhaps the most striking part of the fallout was Catherine's response. Unlike the endless stream of speculation dominating newspapers and television panels, the Princess of Wales reportedly refused to engage publicly in any visible retaliation. There were no interviews, no counterattacks, no dramatic public statements. But according to palace observers, silence inside the monarchy can often carry more weight than open confrontation. Sources suggest Catherine never forgot the damage caused during those explosive years, even as she continued carrying out royal duties with the same composed restraint that made her increasingly admired by both the public and the institution itself. Behind closed doors, reconciliation efforts reportedly became increasingly fragile. Royal staff allegedly viewed attempts to repair the relationship as emotionally exhausting and politically dangerous. Some insiders claim private meetings were quietly discussed but repeatedly stalled by lingering resentment and fears of further breaches of trust. Others whisper that members of the monarchy's old guard had already reached their own conclusions long ago. Because within palace circles, loyalty to the future of the crown reportedly mattered above everything else, and many senior figures quietly aligned themselves with William and Catherine as the monarchy entered one of the most turbulent periods of King Charles' reign. Over time, the divide allegedly stopped feeling temporary. It became structural. Conversations reportedly became carefully managed. Public appearances became strategically separated. And according to royal commentators, the emotional distance between Harry and Catherine gradually transformed into one of the monarchy's most painful unresolved fractures. Which is why, when the two unexpectedly found themselves under emerged under the same roof again at the charity gala, insiders claim the discomfort inside that ballroom carried years of buried history beneath its surface. And according to several royal commentators, the Gala incident may have reopened wounds the palace had spent years trying to bury. Witnesses claim Prince Harry was midway through greeting donors when his expression suddenly changed. His posture stiffened, his smile disappeared, and near the marble entranceway stood Catherine, composed, elegant, and reportedly unaware that her mere presence had already altered the entire evening. By that point, the atmosphere inside the Gala had already become unusually tense, though few guests initially understood why. According to sources familiar with the event, Catherine had not been expected to arrive through the main sequence originally outlined for attendees. Reports suggest her appearance through a secondary entrance caught several organizers and security personnel completely off guard, triggering an Princess Anne emerged quiet wave of confusion behind the scenes. Some insiders claim staff members were suddenly seen exchanging hurried whispers near the reception corridor, while others discreetly adjusted guest positioning around the ballroom. At first, most attendees reportedly dismissed the sudden activity as routine royal protocol, but then Harry looked up. Witnesses claimed the Duke of Sussex had been speaking comfortably with a small group of donors moments earlier, projecting the calm and carefully measured image many expected from his appearance that evening. Sources suggest he appeared relaxed, even confident, as conversations flowed around him. But according to multiple attendees, something shifted instantly the moment he spotted Catherine standing near the entrance greeting guests. One insider later described a look of complete discomfort crossing Harry's face so suddenly that nearby attendees reportedly fell silent themselves. Another guest claimed the Duke appeared momentarily frozen, as thou and GH caught between leaving immediately or pretending nothing had happened at all. And according to palace observers, that split second may have revealed far more than the palace would ever publicly acknowledge. Reports suggest Harry's body language changed almost immediately after noticing Catherine across the room. His posture allegedly tightened, his expression reportedly darkened, and within moments, aides were seen quietly approaching him while maintaining careful smiles for the surrounding guests. Several insiders claim there was an immediate concern among organizers about photographs, headlines, and the possibility of another deeply uncomfortable royal narrative exploding across British media by sunrise. Because by then, according to sources familiar with palace dynamics, the relationship between Harry and Catherine had become one of the monarchy's most emotionally fragile fault lines. Rumors quickly spread among attendees that staff members were attempting to discreetly redirect Mark and Harry away from the reception area altogether. Some guests allegedly noticed security personnel subtly altering movement routes through the venue while conversations near the ballroom entrance became increasingly guarded. Sources suggest organizers feared even the briefest direct interaction between Harry and Catherine could trigger days of media speculation, especially given the years of unresolved tension already surrounding the family. And yet, amid the growing discomfort unfolding around her, Catherine reportedly continued greeting attendees with calm composure, seemingly refusing to acknowledge the storm quietly building elsewhere inside the room. That contrast only deepened the unease. While aides allegedly scrambled behind the scenes to contain the situation, Catherine reportedly remained focused on the event itself, speaking warmly with donors and charity representatives as though nothing unusual had occurred. But insiders whisper that many guests were no longer paying attention to the gala at all. Their attention had shifted entirely toward Harry, whose discomfort reportedly became more visible with every passing minute. Several witnesses claim he appeared distracted and increasingly agitated during conversations, occasionally glancing toward nearby exits while aides continued speaking to him in hushed tones. And then came the moment that transformed quiet tension into full-blown royal drama. According to reports circulating among attendees afterward, Harry abruptly decided to leave less than 20 minutes after spotting Catherine inside the venue. Sources claim the decision happened quickly, with security personnel suddenly repositioning near one of the private exits as the Duke prepared to depart. Some insiders insist he looked frustrated. Others believe he appeared emotionally overwhelmed by the unexpected encounter. But nearly everyone present reportedly agreed on one thing. The atmosphere left behind after his exit felt cold, strained, and deeply unresolved, because according to those familiar with palace tensions, this was never simply about avoiding an awkward moment at a charity gala. The discomfort ran far deeper than that. Years of betrayal, wounded loyalty, broken trust, and carefully buried resentment had allegedly followed both Harry and Catherine into that ballroom long before either of them arrived. But according to insiders familiar with palace dynamics, the real story wasn't the exit itself, it was what Harry reportedly feared might happen if the encounter became public. Even though Prince William was reportedly nowhere near the gala, insiders whisper his presence was felt in every corner of the room. Because within royal circles, Catherine is no longer seen merely as the Princess of Wales, she is viewed as the future queen at the center of the monarchy's survival strategy. That reality, according to palace observers, changes everything. It changes how royal staff respond to tension. It changes how donors behave around the Miles household. And most importantly, insiders claim it changes how Prince Harry himself reacts whenever Catherine unexpectedly enters the picture. Because over the last several years, reports suggest William and Catherine have steadily transformed into far more than popular public figures. Within the institution, they are allegedly viewed as the monarchy's central stabilizing force during one of the most fragile periods in modern royal history. Sources close to palace operations whisper that since King Charles' health struggles became a growing concern, senior officials have quietly shifted enormous institutional focus toward the future reign of William and Catherine. Some insiders allegedly refer to this internal alignment as the heirs' accord, an unofficial understanding among royal advisors, private secretaries, and senior courtiers that the long-term survival of the crown now depends heavily on protecting the Wales household from further instability. While no formal doctrine publicly exists, reports suggest the atmosphere inside royal circles has become increasingly protective, calculated, and deeply cautious whenever Harry and Meghan-related controversies resurface. And according to several royal commentators, Prince Harry understands this better than anyone. That is why insiders believe the gala encounter reportedly triggered such immediate discomfort. Because within palace dynamics, Catherine no longer represents only a strained personal relationship from Harry's past. She represents the future queen. She represents continuity, public trust, and the carefully guarded image of the monarchy's next era. Sources suggest Harry allegedly knew that even the briefest awkward interaction inside the gala could spiral into explosive headlines suggesting renewed royal warfare. And after years of public fractures, televised accusations, and institutional embarrassment, insiders claim the palace has become intensely sensitive to any narrative capable of threatening the stability surrounding William and Catherine. At the center of that sensitivity, reports suggest, stands Prince William himself. According to sources familiar with palace tensions, William remains deeply angered by what he reportedly views as repeated public attacks against Catherine over recent years. While the future king has rarely addressed such matters publicly, insiders whisper that his private resentment surrounding Harry's memoir, interviews, and allegations never fully disappeared. Some royal observers even claim William's protectiveness toward Catherine intensified dramatically after seeing her repeatedly drawn into global controversies she allegedly never wanted to participate in. Within the institution, this reportedly hardened William's relationship with Harry into something colder, more strategic, and far less emotional than it once was. That shift has not gone unnoticed among Britain's elite circles. Royal donors and longtime supporters of the monarchy reportedly remain overwhelmingly loyal to William and Catherine, viewing them as disciplined figures carrying the burden of preserving royal continuity while the institution navigates turbulence on multiple fronts. Several gala attendees allegedly feared that if any visible confrontation between Harry and Catherine emerged publicly, the media fallout would dominate headlines for weeks. Sources claim conversations among organizers became increasingly tense precisely because no one wanted the evening transformed into another symbolic chapter in the royal family's ongoing civil war. And for many guests, the contrast with earlier royal years felt impossible to ignore. There was once a period when Harry and William reportedly appeared inseparable during public engagements, standing beside Catherine during major royal celebrations with an image of unity that seemed unshakable. Palace insiders often described those years as a carefully balanced partnership between the monarchy's younger generation. But according to several commentators, that image now feels like something from another lifetime entirely. Because what unfolded at the gala reportedly exposed just how dramatically royal dynamics have changed since the Sussex split fractured the institution from within. That is why some insiders reject the idea that Harry's departure was an act of protest at all. Instead, reports suggest many interpreted it as avoidance. Not avoidance of Catherine herself necessarily, but avoidance of what her presence symbolized within the modern monarchy, the future. The institution. The reality that the Wales household has become increasingly untouchable inside palace structures, while Harry allegedly finds himself standing further and further outside them with every passing year. Yet behind the scenes, some insiders believe the Gala drama exposed something even larger, a growing royal isolation surrounding Harry himself. For years, Prince Harry and Meghan were viewed as global disruptors capable of reshaping monarchy, but reports now suggest a harsher reality may be unfolding behind closed doors. Shrinking alliances, fading trust, and a social circle increasingly divided over loyalty to the crown. In the years immediately following their royal departure, Harry and Meghan appeared unstoppable. International interviews dominated headlines. Multi-million-dollar media deals reportedly positioned them as influential global figures capable of challenging centuries of royal tradition. Supporters praised them as fearless truth-tellers willing to confront the institution publicly, while critics accused them of turning deeply personal family tensions into international spectacle. Yet according to royal insiders, something far more complicated allegedly began unfolding beneath the surface as time passed. The excitement surrounding their dramatic exit slowly gave way to exhaustion, skepticism, and what some commentators now describe as quiet social distancing among elite royal circles. Report Suit ingested several of Harry's longtime royal associates gradually became more cautious about maintaining visible connections with the Duke after repeated public controversies intensified tensions with the palace. According to insiders familiar with aristocratic networks tied to the monarchy, relationships that once appeared unshakable allegedly became strained by fears of media leaks, unwanted attention, and growing institutional pressure. Some former allies reportedly stopped appearing publicly alongside Harry altogether, while others quietly limited communication to avoid becoming entangled in ongoing royal divisions. Within these circles, loyalty to the crown allegedly remained an unspoken but powerful force. That shift reportedly became especially visible during Harry's visits back to the United Kingdom. Palace insiders claim the Duke's appearances in Britain are now managed with extraordinary caution, with security arrangements, guest coordination, and movement plans allegedly monitored more closely than ever before. Some commentators argue this reflects ordinary royal protocol. Others believe it reveals a deeper institutional anxiety surrounding the unpredictability of Sussex-related headlines. Sources describe an atmosphere of social frost hanging over events linked to Harry and Meghan, particularly within aristocratic and donor communities historically aligned with the senior royals. Invitations reportedly became more selective. Public interactions allegedly grew more restrained. And behind closed doors, insiders whisper that many influential figures simply no longer know where they stand. The contrast with the monarchy's earlier image has reportedly become impossible for royal observers to ignore. Many commentators still point back to the sun-drenched coronation of 2023 as the symbolic final moment before the royal divide hardened into something more permanent. At that time, despite obvious tensions, there remained widespread speculation that reconciliation between Harry and the rest of the family might eventually become possible. But according to palace insiders, the years that followed only deepened emotional fractures rather than repairing them. Public trust allegedly became more difficult to rebuild with every interview, every leaked detail, and every renewed media storm surrounding the Sussexes. At the same time, Catherine's public role reportedly expanded into something far more significant inside the monarchy itself. Sources suggest the Princess of Wales is now viewed by both royal staff and large sections of the public as a symbol of continuity, restraint, and institutional duty during a period of enormous uncertainty for the crown. While Harry and Meghan became associated with disruption and confrontation, Catherine increasingly embodied steadiness and silence. That contrast, according to royal commentators, has quietly reshaped how many people interpret the ongoing royal conflict. And insiders claim Harry has grown deeply frustrated. Aided by the public narrative surrounding him, particularly the perception that he has become increasingly disconnected from the institution he once stood at the center of. Some observers believe that frustration was written all over the Gala incident itself, because according to those familiar with the emotional toll of the royal divide, Harry's abrupt departure may have reflected something much heavier than temporary discomfort. Reports suggest the Duke has struggled with the growing realization that many of the relationships, traditions, and support systems that once defined his life inside the monarchy may no longer fully exist around him. Royal commentators increasingly speculate about deepening emotional isolation surrounding Harry, particularly as the Wales household consolidates influence within the future of the crown, while the Sussexes remain physically and institutionally distant from royal life. And perhaps that is why the atmosphere surrounding the gala reportedly felt so emotionally charged to those present. It was not simply about one awkward encounter between estranged family members. It was about the visible collision between two completely different futures for the monarchy, one rooted in continuity and duty, the other still shadowed by unresolved betrayal, bitterness, and public fallout that refuses to disappear. But the gala exit may not have been the end of the story, because whispers from inside the palace suggest senior royals were already discussing the incident before dawn. Before newspaper headlines even began circulating, reports suggest palace communications teams had already moved into quiet containment mode. Because within the monarchy, perception is never accidental, and moments like this can quickly become institutional crises. According to insiders familiar with royal operations, the moment Prince Harry reportedly left the gala, senior aides allegedly understood the risk immediately. Not necessarily because of what had happened publicly, but because of what people might believe had happened once rumors began spreading through the British press. Within royal circles, sources claim even the smallest unexpected interaction between estranged family members can rapidly evolve into days of damaging speculation. And after years of public tension surrounding Harry and Meghan, palace staff reportedly feared the gala incident could ignite yet another exhausting royal narrative war before sunrise. So while guests quietly departed the event and whispers circulated across London's elite social circles, reports suggest palace communications teams had already begun monitoring media chatter overnight. Sources claim aides tracked early tabloid discussions, private journalist exchanges, and online speculation surrounding Harry's abrupt departure with growing concern. Some insiders allege certain staff members remained awake into the early hours precisely because they feared the situation could spiral into another highly publicized confrontation between the Sussexes and the rest of the monarchy. And according to palace observers, there was one priority above all else: avoid escalation. Sources familiar with royal communications strategy claim discussions inside palace-adjacent offices reportedly centered on preventing emotionally charged narratives from taking hold in the press. Several insiders allege staff members were especially determined to avoid comparisons of previous Sussex-related media storms that had consumed the monarchy for weeks at a time. Because within institutional memory, those earlier conflicts allegedly left deep scars. Televised interviews, memoir revelations, accusations of betrayal, and relentless media speculation had already exhausted large sections of both the palace and the public. The last thing senior figures reportedly wanted was another explosive cycle dominating headlines around the world. That fear reportedly explains why Catherine herself remained completely silent. According to Roy ILS, the commentators, the Princess of Wales has increasingly adopted a strategy insiders describe as discipline through silence. Sources claim Catherine reportedly refused to engage publicly with any speculation surrounding the gala, despite the growing frenzy beginning to build online and within British newspapers. No statements emerged, no leaks appeared connected to her team, and according to some palace insiders, that restraint was entirely deliberate. Because within the monarchy, silence can often function as a form of control, a refusal to give emotional chaos more oxygen than necessary. Behind that strategy, however, reports suggest Prince William's team was already operating with intense caution. Sources familiar with palace structures claim aides surrounding the Prince and Princess of Wales allegedly prioritized what one insider described as stability and silence above everything else. The goal, reportedly, was to prevent the gala from becoming symbolic proof of a complete royal collapse. And according to several commentators, William's advisors have become increasingly protective of Catherine's image in recent years, particularly after the relentless public scrutiny surrounding the Sussex feud placed enormous pressure on the future queen. At the same time, rumors began spreading that Harry's camp had grown deeply frustrated with what they allegedly viewed as worsening hostility from sections of the British press. Some insiders claim the Duke increasingly feels trapped inside narratives portraying him as permanently alienated from the institution he once represented. Others suggest Harry's allies believe the British media has become unwilling to interpret events involving him without immediately framing them through conflict, resentment, or royal dysfunction. And as stories about the gala encounter quietly spread among journalists and commentators, comparisons reportedly emerged to earlier periods when Sussex-related headlines repeatedly dominated the monarch's public image. Royal writers, including figures like Ingrid Seward and Robert Hardman, were once again referenced in discussions surrounding palace tensions, institutional fragility, and the widening emotional distance between Harry and the rest of the royal family. Because according to many observers, the gala incident did not feel isolated. It felt connected to years of unresolved damage still haunting the monarchy beneath its carefully controlled public facade. And perhaps most troubling of all for palace officials was the growing sense that these moments were no longer shocking to the public anymore. What once would have triggered disbelief now reportedly felt almost expected. Another uncomfortable royal encounter, another wave of speculation, another reminder that reconciliation inside the House of Windsor may be slipping further away with every passing year. And as dawn broke over London, one uncomfortable question reportedly lingered inside royal circles. Was this merely an awkward encounter or proof the divide can never truly be repaired? There was a time when royal watchers imagined reconciliation a quiet meeting, a softened tone, perhaps even a return to fragile family unity. But according to insiders, the gala incident may have shattered those hopes more completely than anyone expected. For years, despite the bitterness, the interviews, and the public fallout, many people still believed the fractures inside the royal family could eventually heal. There were constant whispers about private peace talks, discreet conversations through intermediaries, and emotional attempts to slowly rebuild trust behind palace walls. Royal commentators often speculated that time itself might soften the anger between Prince Harry and the rest of the family. Some believed King Charles' illness could ultimately force reconciliation. Others hoped Catherine's famously calm and measured nature might one day create space for a fragile truce. But according to insiders, the atmosphere surrounding the gala reportedly revealed something far darker beneath the surface. Exhaustion, emotional exhaustion, institutional exhaustion, and perhaps most painfully of all, the exhaustion that comes when trust has been broken too many times to fully restore. Sources close to the palace claim the relationship between Harry and several senior royals remains deeply damaged despite years passing since the original split. While public appearances occasionally created the illusion of civility, insiders whisper that private wounds allegedly never stopped bleeding beneath the monarchy's carefully controlled exterior. Catherine, in particular, is reportedly viewed by many inside royal circles as one of the individuals most emotionally affected by the years of public disclosures, accusations, and media storms that followed Harry and Meghan's departure. According to palace observers, the pain surrounding Catherine's role in the conflict runs especially deep because she was once perceived as one of Harry's closest allies within the institution. Reports suggest senior staff still privately remember periods when Catherine allegedly worked hard to maintain harmony between Harry and William during earlier tensions long before the Sussex departure escalated into full public warfare. That history, insiders claim, is precisely why later allegations and memoir revelations reportedly felt so devastating to the Wales household. Not merely politically damaging, but profoundly personal. And according to sources familiar with Prince William's position, that emotional damage fundamentally changed the future king's approach toward Harry altogether. Reports suggest William has become increasingly unwilling to risk further instability surrounding Catherine, especially as the monarchy faces mounting pressures connected to King Charles' reign and the future transition of power. Palace insiders claim the Prince of Wales now views emotional protection of his immediate family as inseparable, protecting the institution itself. Within royal circles, some commentators describe this shift as the moment the monarchy fully embraced the philosophy of duty over blood, a painful idea, but according to many inside the palace, an unavoidable one. That philosophy reportedly extends far beyond William alone. Sources claim younger palace staff and rising royal advisors increasingly align themselves with the Wales household, viewing Catherine and William as the monarchy's clearest path toward long-term stability. Over time, Harry's appearances and public statements allegedly stopped being interpreted solely through personal emotion and instead became viewed through the lens of institutional risk. Every interaction, every interview, Every unexpected encounter reportedly carries the potential to reopen old wounds and destabilize an already fragile royal structure struggling to maintain public trust in an increasingly hostile media environment. Royal commentators now describe the div between Harry and the senior royals as both emotional and constitutional. Emotional because the pain inside the family reportedly remains unresolved. Constitutional because the future of the monarchy itself is allegedly shaping how relationships are managed behind palace walls. And that combination has created a level of tension far more permanent than many royal watchers originally imagined possible. Yet outside Britain, public sympathy remains sharply divided. To some people around the world, Harry and Meghan are still viewed as figures who challenged an ancient institution unwilling to change. To others, William and Catherine represent duty, restraint, and sacrifice in the face of relentless public pressure. And somewhere between those two narratives sits a fractured family reportedly struggling to survive years of emotional damage, while every painful moment unfolds beneath the unforgiving spotlight of global attention. Which is why the Gala incident reportedly felt so heavy to those who witnessed it. Because for many insiders, Harry's abrupt departure no longer looked like temporary family tension waiting to heal. It looked like confirmation that the distance between both sides may now be too vast, too public, and too painful to fully bridge again. But perhaps the most haunting detail of all was not Harry's departure, it was Catherine's reaction after he was gone. After Prince Harry reportedly stormed out, witnesses say Princess Catherine remained calm, poised, and almost unnervingly composed. Yet several guests later described a quiet sadness around her, a silence that seemed to carry the weight of an entire fractured family. According to attendees who remained at the gala long after Harry's departure, the atmosphere inside the venue reportedly changed in ways that were impossible to fully explain. Conversations became softer, laughter allegedly faded. Even guests who had not witnessed the moment directly seemed to sense that something emotional, inept, significant had just unfolded behind the carefully polished surface of royal decorum. And at the center of that uneasy stillness stood Catherine, continuing the evening with the same composed restraint that palace insiders claim has increasingly defined her role within the monarchy. Sources suggest the Princess of Wales never publicly acknowledged Harry's abrupt exit at all. There were reportedly no visible reactions, no whispered comments, no outward sign that anything unusual had happened. Instead, Catherine allegedly continued speaking with charity representatives, donors, and guests exactly as expected of a future queen carrying the immense burden of royal duty. But according to several attendees, it was not her composure that lingered in people's minds afterward. It was the sadness beneath it. A sadness some insiders described as quiet but unmistakable, as though years of private heartbreak had momentarily surfaced beneath the discipline required by royal life, and perhaps that made the evening feel so haunting to those who witnessed it. Because according to palace observers, Catherine has increasingly come to embody the monarchy's philosophy of restraint at almost unimaginable personal cost. While public battles, interviews, and headlines repeatedly dragged the royal family into controversy, she reportedly responded with silence, stability, and unwavering loyalty to the institution itself. Palace insiders claim that approach has earned Catherine enormous respect among senior royals and staff alike. But some commentators quietly wonder what emotional toll such restraint has demanded behind closed doors, especially during years when personal betrayals became global entertainment consumed by millions. Harry's departure, according to many insiders, reportedly symbolized something much larger than one uncomfortable encounter at a London gala. It represented the visible fracture of a family once viewed as the monarchy's future. A family that once stood together during jubilees, weddings, tours, and national moments of celebration now reportedly exists in separate emotional worlds shaped by mistrust, distance, and unresolved pain. And looming over all of it is the growing uncertainty surrounding King Charles himself. Since early 2024, reports surrounding the king's health have allegedly intensified the emotional pressure already surrounding the monarchy. Sources claim senior royals increasingly understand that the institution is entering one of the most delicate transitions in generations. And according to commentators familiar with palace dynamics, that reality has quietly hardened attitudes within royal circles. Stability now reportedly matters more than reconciliation. Continuity matters more than emotional repair. The firm before the family. That phrase, whispered for decades within royal history, now appears to define the monarchy more than ever before. Insiders claim the House of Windsor has entered a colder and far more guarded era, one shaped not only by external criticism but by internal emotional exhaustion. Relationships are allegedly managed more carefully. Public appearances are more controlled. Trust, once broken, appears almost impossible to restore. And within that environment, Catherine's silence reportedly carries symbolic power far beyond ordinary royal protocol. To many observers, she now represents endurance itself, the willingness to sacrifice personal emotion for institutional survival, even as the wounds surrounding the family remain painfully unresolved. Yet despite all the discipline, all the ceremony, and all the careful efforts to preserve stability, the emotional damage reportedly continues lingering beneath the monarchy's polished exterior. Because according to those closest to royal life, unresolved betrayal does not disappear simply because it is hidden from public view. It lingers quietly through every public appearance, every avoided conversation, and every carefully controlled interaction between family members once bound by loyalty and affection. And perhaps that is why the Gala incident continues haunting royal observers long after the ballroom emptied. Not because of dramatic confrontation or public scandal, but because of what the silence appeared to reveal. A monarchy preparing for the future while carrying emotional fractures from the past that may never fully heal. Because within the sacred geography of the British monarchy, departures are rarely just physical. Sometimes, they are the final confirmation that a family once bound by duty now survives only through silence. Thanks for watching. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will see you in the next one.